Hey everyone, thanks for coming to another episode of Bird Unscripted. So, the real question of the day here is, do video game developers actually hate their fans? Do they actually hate gamers? And this is something I've been thinking about actually for a while. I've been kind of mulling it over, but the events of the past week have really kind of incited me to go ahead and record this video. As always, these are just my stream of consciousness thoughts. I don't have any practice or preparation for doing these unscripted videos, so pardon me if I ramble a little bit, but I'll try to keep it moving as much as I can. And as always, if you are enjoying this content, please consider subscribing and drop a like on the video. And tell me if I'm wrong when you get to the end and you think we're not reading it right. I appreciate that kind of engagement. Comments are always good too. So now, having said that, why do I think that the game developers hate gamers? This really kind of breaks down into two categories. I've seen it in two different perspectives. There are the game developers who think that they look at us with contempt as a customer, and then there's the side that's more political. I would start with the first case, just in using the example of Borderlands 4 being released and the CEO of Gearbox, Randy Pitchford. Now, in my opinion, Randy Pitchford is a case study in the concept of, you people are all peasants, but buy my game anyway. This guy has a repeated history of gaffes that show not just condescension, but actually contempt for average gamers. This week, he actually, maybe it was even today, now this is unscripted, but as I go back, I usually don't edit these, but I'll see if I can insert some screenshots over top of me here. He actually today said something to the effect of, if you are running a low-end PC, don't expect miracles. This is a premium game made for premium gamers. Now, that kind of attitude is pretty dismissive, but when you couple it with the things that Randy Pitchford has said before, such as earlier this year when a fan asked him, please don't price this game at $80, keep it at $70, rather than saying something that would be bland and corporatized along the lines of, hey, I appreciate your feedback, we're going to do what we can to make this game as accessible as possible to everybody, and we hope we're able to keep the cost low. That kind of response would have just been kind of eye-rolled at by people of, yeah, whatever. But instead, Randy Pitchford goes the antagonistic route where he says to the guy, if you're not a true fan, or our true fans will find a way to pay the $80, and give some out-of-touch anecdote about his history when the value of the dollar was 100% different, and working a minimum wage job afforded you the opportunity to do things. And if you see me swatting, don't mind me. There's a lot of mosquitoes out today. So this has been a history, and Randy Pitchford has a history of this type of crap anyway. Stemming from back in the Borderlands 3 days when he was accused of physically intimidating employees, when he left a thumb drive of very questionable, salacious material at a public event. This guy is actually, he's painted a public image of a picture of not a very good person. And the fact that he has this attitude of, this game is for elite gamers. First of all, there aren't as many gamers that are quote-unquote elite premium gamers to sell your game to. So if that's your criteria, you're going to drive your sales down. But second of all, it's very dismissive, almost like a sniffing and looking down your nose at people who aren't as good as you in order to play your game. And I just killed one of the little buggers. So there's that. And the fact of the matter is that Borderlands 4 has had tons of problems running, especially on PC, with not top-of-the-line computers. And there are people that have NASA-type computers that are still struggling with stuttering and things like that. You can read the reviews on Steam to see that. So that is an attitude that is very dismissive of gamers and their concerns. And I don't think Pitchford is really the only one in the industry that acts this way. Just in a corporate sense, you look at, games like Activision, or companies like Activision, Blizzard, and Ubisoft that monetize the absolute shit out of their products. Why are they doing that? Because they're just trying to milk people for every last dime. They're not trying to put out a good product because they like you. They're not trying to put out a good product because they or have pride in their work or artistic merit or anything like that. They're putting out a product where they can extract the most amount of coin from their user for the least amount of effort, is what they're doing. And I see it's a very cynical position to see another Call of Duty come out with more skins and blah 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 blah. When there are skins on Call of Duty and games like that and Fortnite that cost more than Hollow Knight Silksong, that cost more than Balatro. I just started playing Balatro yesterday, and I can understand why it was so well liked. You know, these games that can offer you dozens or hundreds of hours of gameplay for $20 or less, and the AAA companies are out here trying to, squeeze blood from a turnip. So I think there's a certain amount of contempt for gamers among developers. I think it's pretty widespread in the AAA space, maybe less so in the indie space. But, these people, a lot of them were either suits who were never game designers in the first place, or they're people that have lost their passion for it in the pursuit of the dollar. Randy Pitchford is just kind of one of the more vocal and outstanding examples of it. But I don't think game developers really have the best interest of their customer in mind. And you could say, well, that's nothing new, that in a capitalist society, most companies don't. And I would say that's fine. But in the case of video games, which are 100% a luxury, not a necessity, why are you supporting the ones that act like this? That's that plain and simple. I liked Borderlands 1 okay. There were parts of it I didn't like. Borderlands 2, I thought was a fantastic game. I thought it played well. It was well written. It was well paced. Character development was good. The stability of the system was good. The multiplayer was good. Across the board, it was an excellent game. I did not play Borderlands 3 because of some of the stuff that Pitchford said, and then because of some things people told me about, or just not told me personally, but things I observed by reading reviews and watching how the game was received, and things like that, that it was not going to really give me a good experience. I won't touch Borderlands 4 with a cattle prod. I'm not going to support people who look down on me openly. And that's the bottom line, You got, when people show you who they are, you should believe them. And Pitchford has shown the gaming community who he really is. He's an arrogant, in my opinion, money-grubbing, corporate type who is not interested in you having a good experience. If he could get the same amount of money for half the effort out of a Borderlands product, he would. And I'm sure somebody's immediately going to go Tiny Tina's Wonderland, because there you go, another game I haven't played. I know some people will say, well, then I will sail the high seas to play it. I'm not telling you what to do. That's generally not my position. But I'm not going to police everybody's behavior. If that's how you feel you want to play the game, then you do what you got to do. But I just don't see supporting these people financially. Now, the other half of this, the other side of this coin, is the political. Now, I'm sure most people who are watching this are aware, because it's been 5 days since it happened, that conservative commentator Charlie Kirk was unalived at a college campus in Utah, in the United States, on Wednesday, the 10th of September. And for people who may not know who Charlie Kirk was, especially for overseas audience, he was a conservative commentator who very much liked to go out to college campuses and debate and discuss with college students on their positions. I would say he was a moderate to strong conservative. He wasn't far right. He wasn't a centrist. And that's kind of what happened. And at least as far as we know right now, I'm sorry if I keep looking over there. I keep seeing something, but it's just the birds flying past. As far as we know, he was shot and he perished after in the middle of an event, and it has created quite a bit of turmoil. Yeah, I'm not going to stake out a political position in this aspect about Charlie Kirk. I'm just presenting the facts as they happened. Now, in the wake of Charlie Kirk's passing, there were a number of video game developers who felt the need to go onto social media and celebrate the fact that he passed away. Most notably, it was an individual who went by the handle of Drew on Blue Sky. And I'm going to mangle this quote because I don't have it in front of me. But this individual said something to the effect of, I hope the shooter was named Mario so that he knows Luigi's got his bros back, in reference to Luigi Mangione, the man accused of killing the United Healthcare CEO in New York a few months ago. You know, the fact that we're saying that we have this, we've had another shooting of somebody considered a despicable individual in public. Now, this, and what has ultimately happened, and this has been echoed, there have been people at Square Enix, Bethesda has tried, and Microsoft companies have had employees doing the same thing. Blizzard has had a whole bunch of employees saying similar things. Now, what this is actually really flabbergasting to me, although it shouldn't be, because I don't know of any other industry, where, especially in the entertainment world, although the entertainment world's all going down this path completely, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised. I don't know of any other industry, really, where people attack the primary demographic of their primary demographic making up their consumer base, where it works out for them. Now, I'm not saying that the bulk of people in the video game that use video games are conservative. I don't know that. But I would say that in the AAA gaming space, the majority of people who consume that product are younger men, probably from 18 to 40. You can try and argue it, but I think that's a reasonably safe assumption to make. I don't think anybody could offer convincing evidence otherwise, that that's your primary demographic. And who was Charlie Kirk's primary target in his political speech? Also young men of the millennial and Gen Z demographic. That's who he spoke to. That's who his primary target audience was, and that is probably where he had his strongest following among people that he spoke to on college campuses that felt quote-unquote converted, if you want to use that term. I'm just going to say it. Being white, being male, and being straight already makes you half a monster in some of these people's eyes. I think back to the community manager for South of Midnight, the game from Compulsion Games, which I think was also an Xbox studio from earlier this year, and they had a community manager who said that white gamers were a mistake. Gaming journalists regularly toss around the terms misogynist and toxic male. When you have these developers who are speaking under the mantle of their company, attacking their primary demographic, it cannot help but harm your sales. I'm going to use Drew, this individual I mentioned. She is a developer for Sucker Punch. I should have mentioned that up front. For the Sucker Punch, which is, I don't remember if they're a second-party studio under Sony. I think they are. Sucker Punch developed Ghost of Tsushima a few years back and is working on the title Ghost of Yotai, the sequel to the first one, which I actually think is out in less than a month now. I think it's early October that it's out. Ghost of Yotai has already had some controversy around it. The lead voice actor for the main character, the protagonist, has a track record of being very outspoken on political beliefs, attacking the same demographic that I basically just outlined. And while I doubt they would characterize it as an attack, I don't see how any reasonable person who's not involved in the conversation would look at it otherwise, because it's how it comes across. There was just controversy over the fact that Jin Sakai's story, the lead protagonist from the first game, was not being continued, that they were going to swap it out and replace it with another character. So this game has already faced some controversy already, and then you have this individual speaking out, and Drew, I'm going to say her because I believe that's what she lists her pronouns as. Pardon me if I'm mistaken. Drew had a lot of people respond to her Blue Sky tweet from other people in the gaming industry, including other people at Sucker Punch, saying that, agreeing with her, liking the tweet and boosting it. So this is not just a case of one person. Now, Drew is no longer with Sucker Punch or Sony, and they doubled down by saying, if it cost me my dream job I've been at for 10 years, it was worth it. It would do it 100 times again. I mean, when your sense of hatred runs deeper than your sense of self-preservation, there's not a whole lot anybody can do for you. Now, I'm going to just say that when you look at something like Ghost of Yotai, a game that's already facing problems, we are already in an era where I don't think AAA studios can afford to bleed off any buyers unnecessarily. Games, going or $70. There's this push that's been trying to go to $80. Thus far, gamers have resisted, but it won't last forever. Eventually, games will be $80 or more. Game development costs are skyrocketing. Games have to sell more and more copies, not just to break even, but to remain profitable. And gamers are going to, by force of necessity, start getting more selective because they don't have the resources to continue to buy a game, 3 games a month or 2 games a month. They're going to start scaling down because when it comes to buying a game or putting food on the table, like I said earlier, buying a game is a luxury. I don't think AAA companies can afford to unnecessarily alienate any of their consumers. Now you say, well, this is probably not going to affect a whole lot of people. This only the terminally online would know about this. And I would agree with you. But how many is that? 250,000? 500,000? 1 million people? There'll be millions of people online that will see this. How many of them won't buy the game because of it? Even if it's 250,000 or 500,000, that's that many more sales they won't get. And if you say, oh, it's only 10,000, well, companies have been surprised by the things like Bud Light's boycott. And Bud Light is, the beer industry is not that much different than the gaming industry. You have a lot of alternatives for your time. Like I said, especially with the indie studios filling the spaces right now so effectively. There's no need to spend $50 on a company that tells you they hate you, or $70, I should say. So, even if they only lose 5% of their sales because of this, and they lost 5% because of Erika Ishii's involved as the voice actress, and they lost 5 to 10% because they're not continuing Jin Sakai's story. Now you start looking at these slices, and now they've lost many more sales than they would have before. They've lost 15, 20% maybe of their sales. No game right now can afford to do that. Other than Grand Theft Auto 6, which if they lost 20% of the sales, they'd still make $1 billion. But you can't measure your success by the biggest kid on the block, They just don't have that kind of, I don't think game companies have that kind of leeway, and I don't think that's a crazy take considering how many game developers have been shuttered in the last couple years. How many studios have been shut down and game devs have been laid off because they're not making a profit. You can't afford to piss people off at all. You can't go out of your way to antagonize people and expect to remain successful. We'll see how successful Borderlands 4 is. I'm sure it's probably sold the 1 or 2 million copies by now. But is it going to sell a lot more? I don't know. Borderlands 3 sold, stop me if I'm wrong, I'll look this up after I finish. 15 million copies? Okay, but it was riding on the success of Borderlands 2. Borderlands 4 doesn't have that hype. People are already cautious. Then you have all the performance problems. Then you have Randy Pitchford putting both feet in his mouth. Excuse me. You start taking those slices away, and what's going to happen? I know it's hitting 300,000 or so on Steam right now, and that's fine. But I'm curious how many copies it's going to sell, and I'm also curious how many copies did it need to sell in order to be a financial success. At $70 a game, once you take the Steam cut off of there, plus figure back in the marketing, it's probably in the 4 to 5 million copy range just to break even. Will they get there? Probably. Will they get much more? Hard to say. Would they have gotten more if they hadn't had these other problems? I'd say without a doubt. I don't even think it's worth arguing about. But when it comes back to, the fact that there are these devs out there who actively seem to dislike their customer, you really only have one weapon against this as the consumer, and that's the power of your wallet. I mentioned the Bud Light boycott. Right, whether you agree with it or disagree with it, I think it's undeniable that it ultimately shook the company into a point where they still haven't recovered. Several years later, they have not recovered from that boycott financially. Excuse me. If you feel like the game developers are not talking to you, or they're talking to you out of turn, you do not have to support them. And I'll take it a step further. Not only do I not want to support game devs who don't like me, I don't want to support game devs who would be happy if I were dead. When somebody says to me, white gamers were a mistake. Now, the person whose name escapes me, I can see her face, the community manager for Compulsion Games who said it was taken out of context. It's hard to take that out of context. When you tell me that you actively hate me and would, I superficially, again, I'm white, I'm male, I'm straight, I'm married, so superficially, Charlie Kirk and I have some resemblances. Would they care if I was dead too, just because I'm those things? It's hard to say. I'm not going to support people who would be happy to see me dead. Witcher is one of my favorite franchises. I've loved it. All three of the first games I really enjoyed. Witcher 3 to me might be the best RPG ever put on a computer. I was really looking forward to Witcher 4. The fact that it was Siri didn't bother me. People, there's the usual hue and cry from people who, okay, we're replacing a man with a woman. We don't like that. It didn't bother me because she was a known character. She was a good character, and even the lore of the Witcher games has drifted so far from the lore of the books that none of that bothered me about the fact that they say she couldn't become a Witcher and boys couldn't become girls couldn't become Witchers, whatever. None of that bothered me. But then I see some art director who works for CD Projekt Red saying something to the effect of gamers should be punched in the face. I'd like to punch gamers in the face. Probably because some gamer somewhere said something he didn't like. And now it's a quandary. Do I want to give money to people who would be happy to inflict physical harm upon me? That's a tough one. And even as much as I like The Witcher, right now I'm just going to have to wait and see what happens. I don't feel good about that, and it's not going to take much to push me to the point where I won't buy it as much as I'd like to, or I will wait years to buy it. Because when you could buy it in 2 years with all the DLCs at a quarter of the price, I feel less bad, I guess, about giving them my money then. But I'm not going to support the company up front if they employ people who literally wish physical harm upon me. I'm not telling any of you what to do. I'm not telling any of you where you should draw the line on your morals. And, I would say the same thing if you thought that if you were more of a progressive leaning person and you thought the developers were more to the right and you didn't like the way they talked, I would tell you the same thing. Then don't support their product. Now, granted, there aren't a whole lot of game developers in the Western world that are openly right wing. So I don't, there have been some cases of them attacking their gamers. I can't think of any. But politically, it all usually seems to be people on the left who are progressive attacking more conservative gamers with the usual barrage of, racist, sexist, bigoted, homophobe, misogynist, toxic, masculine, all the same usual crap that they just vomit out anytime when they could just say we don't like you would be the shorthand. It'd be the same effect. If you're on the other side, I'd say to you, you face the same dilemma. Why would you give money to people who hate you? I'm not going to tell you what to do. If you want to support these companies, that's on you. But just recognize that you are, in fact, supporting people who either look at you with disdain or politically they would be happy to see you harmed or unalived. So I think it's a bad It's a bad look for the industry. I think it's a bad situation, and I don't know how much longer it's gonna. I don't know how much longer the game industry is gonna hold together. To be honest with you, there's so many things happening right now. I don't want to make this any longer than it is, but between things like Nintendo's abuse of the, in my opinion, abuse of the patent system, the price of games going through the roof, the fact that most companies are looking for their live service miracle to have Fortnite, or excuse me, and that's the other thing I didn't mention. You know, then you have Tim Sweeney, just today or yesterday, who had come out there and started running his mouth about a university, I want to say it was Clemson, who had released some employees following things they said about Charlie Kirk, and he started going on, well, is this free speech? I thought you cared about free speech. And I'm like, I don't know if he was trying to take a jab at people on the right for using cancel culture, or if he was just trying to play free speech absolutist, you know, and play devil's advocate in the situation. But I'm like, Tim, read the fucking room, man. Nobody is in the mood for this type of passive-aggressive bullshit right now. If you didn't like Kirk and you wanted to mock people, come out, have a set of testicles and come out and say it. Don't dance around it. And if you weren't trying to do that, if you were just trying to play devil's advocate, sit down and shut up, man. It's not the time. Nobody's in the mood. Another guy, Tim Sweeney, who, and I could make a whole video about him, who I think doesn't really have the best interest of gamers at heart, no matter what he says. So that's neither here nor there. But every game company is looking for their own Fortnite. They're looking for their live service miracle that they can milk for, you know, millions of dollars without much effort. And they're shutting down. AAA space is really in trouble. If there is a shining light, it's in the indie space. You know, Hollow Knight, Silksong, Balatro, Schedule 1, Peak. Stardew Valley remains a consistent performer. Terraria, if you step up to the AA, games like Clair Obscur, Expedition 33, Factorio, these other games that are going to fill the gap, I think, for the AAA companies, because I think that we are really looking at a shrinkage in the industry just because of all these factors that are out there. I don't think they can continue to hemorrhage money the way they have been and hemorrhage customers. Anyway, it's almost a half hour, so I have talked long enough here. If you hung on to the end, I appreciate that. Like I said up front, as always, if you enjoy this content, please drop a like, drop a comment. Let me know what you thought. Tell me if you disagree with me. I'd love to have your subscription if you think I've earned that. I am always trying to extend my reach. Going to be trying a few new things on the channel. I think I got some relatively good advice, so I'm going to be mixing things up a little bit going on forward. Unfortunately, I'm working on my old backup desktop right now because my video card blew out this last weekend, and I have to send it off for repair. So until it's fixed, I got to work on a less powerful system. But I'll still be trying to get a few videos out here and there. Anyway, I'm gonna call it here. The mosquitoes are driving me crazy, so I'm gonna end this right here. Thank you all for tuning in once again. I appreciate that. Y'all go out there, live your best lives, and y'all stay gaming.